Hi, thank you for joining me for my live policy presentation. So today I'm going to be talking about a topic that I've been doing a good amount of research on. This topic is revolving around universal background checks, and I'm basically supporting to have greater regulation on gun regulations throughout the nation. So the first thing I'm going to go through is my policy change agent. The person I've chosen is a U.S. Senator from South Carolina. His name is Lindsey Graham. He has recently been in support of a lot of gun policies. So one thing that he has done most recently has been in support of the bipartisan Safer Communities Act of 2022. Basically, this means that he is supporting having more background checks that also have more information included in the background checks in order that we're getting more information about someone's mental health, about someone's um, kind of about someone's criminal history, other things like that, so that we know better if they are qualified to be able to hold a weapon. So throughout this, I've been doing a lot of research about these topics so that I can really build my knowledge about how we might be able to fix something like this. So I've got four sources that I'm going to be going through. The first one is from an article called The Effects of Background Checks. This was written by the RAND Corporation. This article was written a couple of years ago. It was actually kind of focused on a survey from 2004 that they did of state prisoners. Throughout studying the inmates, they found that 10% of these inmates who had weapons had gotten them from licensed dealers, meaning that the other 90% had not gotten these weapons from licensed dealers. Additionally, only 50% of these people that had gotten their weapons were required to do background checks. With this being said, it's clear that there's a fatal flaw in how regularly background checks are being provided. Also, there are clear loopholes that are allowing people to get possession of guns without having going through licensed dealers. This is definitely something that having higher quality background checks and enforcing a universal background check is going to be very vital to kind of fix or at least lower the amount of people that are being able to get through without having to perform background checks. Another source I found was from an article titled Background Check or Purchase Permit. This was written by everytownresearch.org. And they found that background checks, um, they are made so that they can study the criminal history of someone, the mental health of someone, or other deciding factors that can be very vital to someone's availability or readiness to possess a weapon. They also found that states that did have background checks were known for having significantly lower rates of suicide, homicide, or other firearm invited or involved crimes. So I think that in of itself is proof that this is something that will help regulate a lot of the crimes that people are noticing and that are becoming all too common these days. Additionally, from an article titled "Background Checks could curb gun violence" by ABC News, they found that having background checks keeps guns from being legally sold to those who might be able to commit crimes with them. Meaning that by having background checks, we can catch things that might make make someone a harm in possession of a gun. So I think it's very important that we are able to provide accurate background checks that can be useful to people so that we're keeping it out of the hands of people who are going to be harmful. The last one that I've been focused on was from the Giffords Law Center to protect gun violence on gunpolicy.org. This was basically stating that current federal law does not require dealers to perform background checks if the purchaser presents a state permit or if they possess other firearms with similar conditions. Basically, meaning if someone who has bought a gun years ago comes in and they want to buy a new one, even though maybe things have changed in their life, maybe their mental health has been altered, maybe some factors have changed that might make them, susceptible to committing crimes with their weapons. If they have that state permit or if they've had a weapon that had similar conditions, they are still able to walk out with that gun regardless of having a background check at all. So I think this one was definitely the most concerning for me because it creates this huge kind of assumption that someone is, you know, ready for a weapon and that they are able to have control over it. When in reality, I think that not being assessed every time when purchasing a gun is a huge problem and it definitely needs to be solved. So, with this being said, I'm going to end this presentation by opening up questions to you. So, do you have any questions for me?
Yes. If gun policies are clearly flawed, then why hasn't more regulations been put in?
So I think the biggest thing with this is gun policy. I think the push for having regulation is kind of a newer topic just because of, gun violence used to not be that big of a deal, but I think recently it's become a really, really big problem. Not also, I guess another thing would be the Second Amendment of the Constitution states that humans have the inalienable right to bear arms. So I think a lot of times when politicians go to create new regulations or new policies, they end up being blocked by that constitutional right. I do think there's certain things like a universal background check that do not go against those rights at all. So I think in general it's hard to create policies or that, are sure to make an impact, especially with the political block in the way. So, with that being said, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for presenting, and
Have a good night.
you too. Bye.
Bye.